Hey guys, just wanted to jump on here really quick. I've had a lot of people reach out to me in terms of how they can support what I'm doing. I am doing this full time now, and if you'd like to contribute, if you like and value the work that I'm doing and like to contribute, on every single episode I have a title "Support My Work." Underneath it, there's a Venmo, Locals, Cash App, or if you prefer not to use one of those methods, you can mail a check or money order to PO Box 25383, Scottsdale, Arizona 85255 9998. So, again, thank you for all the support. Appreciate it and look forward to more conversations ahead. Bill, Happy New Year. Thanks for doing this. And one thing I always appreciate about our conversations, you're not a guy that beats around the bush. So thank you. I mean, you call it like it is.
Why, why beat around the bush? Yeah, why beat around the bush?
I try to be objective of where I think we are, right? I'm not an expert like you and some of the other people I have on here, but I get criticized a lot. I get a lot of shit. People call me, black pilled. I have no hope. I'm a doomer. Blah blah blah. And I don't look at it like that. I think sometimes we need to be candid and just blunt with where we are. And I don't know how you felt after yesterday. I'm not thinking that we're in the golden era here with the Trump administration. What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, uh, welcome to the club for getting shit. You're a doom porn or whatever, but reality is reality. And I mean, I just keep going back to the math is the math, and we have debt and we have obligations as a country that are completely unpayable. Um, well, it was good to see. I mean, it was good to see the Biden administration gone because I can't tell you how much my blood pressure has gone up over the last 4 years. Whenever you get absolutely unqualified people in positions, um, I mean, just an example. The what's the guy? The guy's name? Rachel Levine comes out in a dress. That type of stuff is bullshit. It's not what normal children should see. Uh, and we went 4 years of them trying to foist bullshit on us, and if you call it out, you get shouted down. Um, so that's going to change. I was happy with a bunch of his executive orders. Um, we'll see going forward how this goes, but I do believe that he's going to be the one who institutes or brings forth the central bank digital currency, which I think will be a disaster for liberty. Uh, the other thing that I learned, I didn't even know about it until Sunday night and then Monday morning before the inauguration. I think it's absolutely atrocious that Trump brought forth whatever it's called, the Trump meme coin or whatever, and from zero to the number I heard, and maybe more, maybe less, I don't know, but from zero to 33 billion in market cap for that meme coin in 3 days. Uh, heck, that market cap alone would is one and it's a year and a half of global silver production. It basically was created out of thin air and in 72 hours. That's complete bullshit, and I think it's embarrassing for a president to come into office and go to bed last night saying, "Well, I just became president and made however many billions of dollars off of that meme coin."
And then you follow up with the Melania coin right after.
Whatever. I mean, I think it's bad. I don't view that as above board. That's a pump and dump, um, and I think it's mostly overlooked. Um, but like I said, I think it's atrocious. I think it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about this earlier, and and I said I don't know the legality behind it, but the optics of it don't look good. And I'm assuming there's somebody in the family that runs these that, capitalized on the name. But here you are, getting sworn in, and a couple days before you put this out there, it gets inflated so quickly, and then you do the Melania coin, shortly after. So then the price of the Trump coin plummets, and who's left holding the bag with all this stuff?
Well, I mean, yes, yes, and yes. Everything you just said.
But yet you've got these people that are so like the Trump derangement syndrome on the other side, where they're just they can do no wrong, they can do no wrong, they can do no wrong, and I've you're not the first person that said the whole digital currency will be introduced during this term, and one of my biggest concerns is, big tech did everything they could to get rid of him in 2020, and now they just come right behind him to push him across. They're there yesterday. And here's let me share this with you, Bill, and you tell me what you think. Ironically, the WEF is going in Davos right now, is happening this week. I mean, these people, right. Elon and Bezos, maybe they are the WEF. Maybe this is the new, because they're the ones building the instruments for all this.
Well, and I think it's laughable. I mean, look at the people who went to Mar-a-Lago in the last, 2 to 4 weeks to meet with Trump. I mean, Zuckerberg went. Zuckerberg spent $400 million to keep him from getting elected in 2020. There's high-tech CEO after CEO that have been to his office and, apparently kissed his boots or licked his boots or whatever. I don't think these people can be trusted. And I think if he does trust them, that's a huge mistake, because, you're not going to go from giving $400 million away 4 years ago, and up until the election, still had all kinds of censorship. Then once the election's done, then all of a sudden, he's MAGA. He's making America great again. He's free speech. I don't think so. And I don't think that's the case with any of these CEOs or oligarchs that have gone to Mar-a-Lago and kissed his boots.
And to add, Bill Gates was just there.
Yeah, that's like super bad. I'm surprised actually with Bill Gates that Biden didn't pardon him also. I mean, the list of Biden pardons is a complete joke.
I don't know how do you pardon people that haven't been charged?
Well, there was a case in 1915, I forget the name of it, regarding pardons that was heard by the Supreme Court. And their finding was that if you're given a pardon, a preemptive pardon, or any, not a preemptive, but if you're given a pardon and you accept it, that's an admission of guilt. And if a pardon is given, that's an assumption of guilt by the president that's issuing the pardon.
So maybe Bill Gates turned it. I mean, who knows? I don't. This whole thing, even you're talking about the Trump coin pardon. It's we are literally in the era of breads and circuses now. And is this the end of the empire?
We're flat in the middle of Banana Republic is where we are. I mean, you got the two things to make a Banana Republic. One, when I was growing up, when I was in college, if any country got to 100% debt to GDP, that was the doorway to becoming to a Banana Republic. Anyone with over 100% debt to GDP, they had their currency and their whatever debt outstanding, those were attacked. And I mean, we're 130% debt to GDP, and we are the reserve currency of the world, which makes the entire world, the entire banking system, a Banana Republic. Then the other half to it is the judicial system. And, what we've seen over the last 4 to 8 years with weaponized lawfare. We are a banana republic. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Yet the dollar is the reserve currency of the world.
How in your eyes do you envision if Trump's going to be the one to introduce a digital currency? Because they're gonna have to sell this, right? They have to sell this notion to the general public to say
Now,
we want it, we want this, we want this. So what? How will they advertise this or market it?
I don't think when it comes down, people are going to say we want this. People are going to be begging for it because I think what they're going to do is they're going to allow. I mean, all markets are rigged, and they're going to allow markets to collapse. And you're going to see banks close, brokers close, uh, and then people will not have money, and they're going to be begging for a central bank digital currency that actually has a balance in it so they can buy food. Now, I don't know whether it's going to be a month, 2 months, 6 months afterwards. My guess is that's when the great taking is going to take place. Once they have everybody corralled into digital currency, then they'll take everything.
It's funny. I hope David Webb will be on here next week to talk a little bit further about the Great Taking, and yeah, and he's doing a phenomenal job, working with the individual states to try to stop this. But what do you, in your estimation, what could be the catalyst to really escalate it? Because it could
Broken market, a market that they can't get open on a Monday morning.
so
If markets don't open, if banks don't open, people are going to start screaming. Things are going to go bad really fast. I mean, the average person doesn't even have 3 days worth of food. So a broken market where people don't have access to their funds, that will create the population to be begging for help. And that help is going to be the central bank digital currency, which uh, it either is or is the precursor to a global mark of the beast.
Yeah, and too many people right now, they think because Trump's back in that he's going to be able to just fix all these things. And one man cannot just move levers.
No, and one man can't change math. Math is what the problem is. I mean, the problem is, and Janet Yellen apologized for it. She was running the show for the 8 years that it took $15 trillion to be added onto the debt. You cannot change the math. You either owe the money or you don't owe the money. We owe it, and we don't have the ability to pay it back. And no matter how America first and how much he wants to get the people behind that, that's not going to change the math. We still owe the money, and we don't have the national income to pay it back.
And also, I think, too, is another one of your concerns from a society and the deterioration. I mean, you were talking about Rachel Levine earlier. Our system is so fragile that any more shocks to it, and you're going to see, pardon my language, but you're going to see some scary shit. Or you could.
Yeah, uh, yeah, and if anything, uh, this unification, if you will, of the right may have divided the country even worse because up until Sunday, we had to put up with the woke bullshit. We had to, it wasn't polite to speak out regarding wokeness. And I mean, I can see people now being emboldened. Perfect example. I've told this story a few times. I've only been to Austin like I don't know 3 or 4 times now in the last 5 years. Just as 2020, before COVID started, I was in Austin. I went to a restaurant, and a tranny walks up to me outside. I was having a cigarette. Tranny walks up to me, does not ask me for a cigarette, demands a cigarette, and then goes into the part where you're white, you're rich, and you owe it to me. And I told the guy to leave. Um, it got more heated than that, and the guy understood he had to leave. Um, what I can foresee coming now is that the right is going to be emboldened, and a tranny in that same situation. Uh, my response being, drop trial, let me see what you got. That's going to come forth. People are going to be more emboldened, and now the I don't know what the word is. Now the aggravation that they gave us over women's bathrooms, girls in sports, uh, trannies running the military, that aggravation is going to come back to those people because they were never, ever even close to a majority. I would bet they were not even 5% of the population, maybe not even 3% of the population. But, and I don't really want to use the word respected or accepted, but they were given a pass somewhat publicly. I mean, I was boisterous against that type of thing, but in the grocery store or wherever, they were somewhat given a pass. You just blew them off and you just went on with your day. But I can see that they're not going to be given a pass anymore. And that's going to create more agitation.
So, because people have become more jaggedy now, right? More on edge and more.
No, because people now understand that the conservatives are the majority, and that that aspect of the left is the vast super minority, and the majority doesn't have to go along with what a super minority tells you the way things are. They're not that way, and they're going to be told things are not this way. And I mean, Trump said it yesterday. There's only two genders, male and female, and it's always been the case. But you had the entire Washington D.C. administration running around saying, "Oh yes, well, males that have transitioned to females, they can have babies," and just all kinds of just ridiculous, stupid, asinine bullshit that makes no common sense. And I think one of the things Trump said yesterday was that this is going to be a resumption of common sense. I mean, obviously, anyone who's not for that is not for the country.
Yeah, I think though too, where the conservative media is failing us to a certain degree because they're not telling the general public where we are and how bad of the situation is. And at this point, in my opinion, these institutions cannot be salvaged.
And they're not going to tell you where we are until it's too late to do anything about it or after the event. I mean, you're not going to see legacy media, although you may have legacy media start pounding on the financial markets, saying everything's overcooked and overpriced and rigged. I mean, even that wouldn't surprise me. But definitely leading up to a crash event, I think you will see a shift in legacy media, to try to torpedo this thing. And what happened? It will happen on Trump's watch, and he's going to be blamed for it.
Do you think I never bought into the narrative that they want this to crash on his watch? What do you think?
I think they would prefer it to crash on his watch,
Yeah, I just always believe once
and
you.
and and that goes to say I don't exactly know who the individuals are that are pulling the strings. So maybe those individuals, uh, maybe they don't want to do it on Trump's watch, but I think it's going to come down on his watch because, I mean, we literally should have gone down back in 2012, 13, 14. After the trillions upon trillions of stimulus and uh, backstopping that the Fed and the Treasury did once that wore off. We had that in 2020, we had it in 2021, and you're definitely seeing all of that stimulus has worn off. People don't have fat bank accounts now that they can, they're getting a check every month and an extra 2,000 here or 1,500 there or whatever. That money's gone. But back in 2012, 13, 14, we should have collapsed then, but they continued with QE. QE, we've literally been on QE ever since 2008, 2009. And the question is why? Why can't the real economy survive without QE? Why can't the financial markets and banks and brokers and insurance companies, why can't they survive and do quite well without QE? And the reason being, the bubble got too big, it got too heavy, and the institutions can't hold the system up anymore.
And that's not, and with the QE, you're not even talking about COVID, how they, printed even more.
Right. Well, and that's what happened in 2019. We had the repo problem in October, November of 2019. And then along came COVID. And what did COVID do? It basically shut the real economies down, which created less demand for credit. So that eased up on the repo markets. And I mean, they were putting in $100 billion a night just to try to keep repo under control. And like I said, along came COVID, and all the monies that were pumped into the system, problem solved.
And all that shifting of money from the middle class that went to, all the, those few,
Right.
those very few.
Yeah, I mean, there's some high profile names that got some pretty big numbers. And I mean, obviously, some of these names are in such, good financial shape. They had no business getting financial help, but they got it.
Yeah. How does a country survive without a middle class, which what's left of it has just
It
been
doesn't.
absolutely destroyed?
Yeah, it does not.
So how do we restore
And
it?
that's another point.
Oh, go ahead.
That's one more point about being that's another hallmark. You have, the few super rich oligarchs and almost no middle class, and then you've got the working class poor. And that's where we are now. Middle class has been gutted.
So how do you restore that then?
Well, you can't, like I said, the math is the math. That debt, everything's already in place. You can't reverse it. What's going to have to happen is the system's going to have to absolutely come down and then reboot the system, but not the same system. We could go back to commodity-backed currencies. We could go back to currencies issued by treasuries that are non-interest bearing currency. Because to create currency today, money has to be borrowed to bring it into existence. And anytime anything is borrowed, there's an interest rate associated with it.
Well, what does your sense tell you then? Is we said earlier that people will be begging for this digital currency, and will there be a resistance to it? And at this point, as an individual, what can you do?
Well, I mean, I will certainly resist it. I think you will probably see both the east and the left coast accept it, but I don't see that it's going to truly be accepted in the heartland. And there's still a lot of people that do business, with cash. I mean, I run around and spend cash everywhere. I use a credit card very little. or a debit card very little. I spend cash. To me, it's a form of liberty. I'm spending my capital on what I want, and I'm not being tracked. I'm not getting advertisements uh, in my email or on my phone because I just spent money at Starbucks or whatever. Um, the the resistance is going. There will be resistance, but it's not going to be as massive as the demand to have it. Because as I said, if I'm correct, and they try to bring this forth after a market collapse and after institutions have told you, no, the bank's not open, or no, we're not gonna open, and your balances are gone. People are going to find out. People will, when they do find out that they're out of money, they're going to demand help from the government. Please come save me. And I think that's everything that's everything against what I grew up with, and how I think. The government doesn't need to save me. I've never taken a penny of government money and don't ever plan to take a penny of government money. But the mindset out there now is, uh, the government is your mommy with a bottle to feed you.
Yeah, and that's where I think, from the society standpoint, we don't know what hard times are, and especially my people my
No,
age and younger.
right? No, I mean people my age, and I'm 65 years old. I was born in 1960. My entire generation, we don't know hard times. We don't know hard times. Now go back to World War II. People who are 80 years old, of course, they were babies when it happened. But World War II, I mean, they rationed everything. It was a total effort nationwide. And people chipped in by not being able to buy tires, or only X amount of gas, or X amount of eggs or rice or beans or whatever. Steel was impossible to get. Those were hard times. From literally from World War II on, after the soldiers came back, this country has never experienced tough times.
Well, and then you see with right now on the from a left standpoint and a coastal city, LA, what those fires have done to that area, and the looting and the robbing and the fact that you take I'm quoting my friend Matt Bracken here, but that you take a highly dense population and flood it with people from third world countries, with a county that doesn't enforce a rule of law, that it says shoplifting under $1,000 is okay, and doesn't is not Second Amendment friendly, and this is what you get.
Yeah, and that happened while people in Western North Carolina received almost no help, if not hindrance. I mean, they were kicking people out of hotel rooms while that was happening. And I do want to say, I think the jury's still out on what happened in LA, whether that was natural stuff or whether fires, whether they were purposely started, whether they were DEWs. I mean, that remains to be seen. The jury's still out on that. We saw it in Maui. We saw it in, where was it, Peru or Chile. Um, I I lived uh, through a wildfire back in 2011. I lost my house. There were 1,700 houses that got lost, and I can pretty much assure you that in that 35-mile swath, there were no trees in the aftermath that looked like the trees look in LA. I mean, how is it that you can have a car that's completely melted? The block is melted, the aluminum rims are melted, yet the tree 20 yards away still got green leaves on it. I don't know. Like I said, the jury's still out. We'll see. We'll see where this leads,
You've traveled
if
quite
anywhere.
you've traveled quite a bit, abroad, and I know you're in the United States now. Have you ever thought to yourself, I mean, if things get this bad, would there be another country you would suggest going to?
Myself, no. I've already done it. I went to Costa Rica. My Spanish got good enough to know that they really don't like gringos. They smile at us because we're spending money. Um, if I was 20 years ago was when I did it, 2006. So I was 46 years old. If I was that age, yeah, I might think about it. I might think of Uruguay or Paraguay. Um, I did some research. We thought about New Zealand. We thought about Australia. And then, I mean, look at the legal systems there. If you don't take the jab, they put you in jail. It's, there's U.S. laws don't transcend other nations. Um, but at this point, no. I came back to Texas. I'm going to fight this thing shoulder to shoulder with people who think like me, my neighbors. They look like me. They speak like me. Um, so me personally, no, I don't have any plans to move.
What are your thoughts on Argentina and El Salvador? What Malay and Bukele are doing?
What Malay is doing, um, I think is a good thing, but this is going to take a long time. It's going to take a long time to unwind that situation. I mean, it basically, uh, he's put austerity into the mix, which they obviously needed. The problem with austerity is if and actually we can do two topics here because we'll look at Doge here in the United States. The problem with Doge is whatever monies they find that are being spent, stupidly, those monies are not going to get into the economy. Those monies are not going to be part of GDP. Uh, so while it's nice to say, yeah, we want to cut 2 or 3 trillion out of the budget, if you did that, if you cut 3 trillion out, what you're doing is you're cutting out 10% of the spending in a $29 trillion economy. And what that does is, I mean, it collapses the system that has been built, for many, many, many years. And it brings, I mean, the system being built. Look at cities today. If you go back 20, 30 years ago, cities, they were the place people wanted to be. But now you've got cities where you've got, like you said, the looting in California and stuff. I mean, look at San Francisco. It's basically completely shut. And what has that done? That's caused a commercial real estate problem nationwide, where what the numbers are trillion or trillion 5 just this year alone has to roll over. And a very, very small fraction of that is only what's going to be able to be rolled over. So when you bring austerity into an economy, into a system that has gross overspending, frivolous spending, ridiculous spending on things that are not necessary, when you turn that off, it's like taking drugs away from a drug addict. They're going to Jones, they're going to crack up.
Yeah, and how feasible is it anyway, too, right? Is it if they get in there and I mean you're running a $2 trillion deficit every year, and somebody had said, well, you can do away with FEMA. Well, okay, that's nothing in comparison to what would really need to be done.
Well, the problem, and here's the math again, the problem is these things are already hardwired. These things cannot be turned around. They can't be taken out, can't be taken back. The interest is the interest. We owe it no matter what. Can you actually see them cutting the military budget? No, they're not going to cut the military budget. So right there, that's $2 trillion of spending just between those two. But there's so many guarantees. From loan guarantees to uh, social programs. When you cut those, now you're cutting some lifelines. So you're hurting individuals, but again, you're hurting the system overall because it doesn't have the cash flow. It doesn't have the oil running through the motor. Uh, So I mean, I just view what Malay is doing is admirable, but it's going to end up in a train wreck where they're going to have to reboot, and hopefully for them, and hopefully for us and the rest of the world, that once they reboot, they get a system that is long-term tenable.
Who's in last
And
question?
I mean, a lot of people were fooled in 1913 about the Federal Reserve being today, where that model had to lead us to a debt saturation, to levels where the debt couldn't be paid back.
You cut out. What did you say? 1913. Federal.
1913, when the Federal Reserve was started, that was not a long-term tenable operation. Mathematically, it had to end up exactly where we are today, where we've got debt saturation, interest rates can't be hiked because you blow up the debt, and then nothing can get refinanced, and the whole thing comes down. It was predictable.
Who's in worse shape, United States or Europe right now?
I'm going to say Europe, and I'm going to say Europe only because of the way they originally started with whatever it is, 27 different nations all under the same currency. The problem is you've got like Italy and Spain with inherently weak currencies. You got Germany with inherently, long-term strong currency. It doesn't uh, it doesn't favor or praise countries that are acting in an austere manner. It's the weak countries that get rewarded because you're living off the coattails of the strong countries because it's one currency rather than 27 different currencies.
So you see that breaking up in a non-peaceful way potentially.
Uh, it's hard to say. I mean, I think the next 12 months we're going to have information overload like we've had for the last 2 to 4 weeks. I mean, just look since January 1st. Look at all the information that's come out just in that 20 days. And I think this year is going to be like that. So I think this year, the rubber's going to meet the road. I think 2025 is the year that it all comes down.
What about hyperinflation? How much of a concern is that for you?
Well, it should be a concern for everyone because we are going to lose the dollar. I mean, if you can't pay the interest, and yes, we can pay the interest now, we could probably pay it for 3 or 4 more years, but and that's assuming interest rates don't go up. But people look forward, they can look forward 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, and they can see, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't work mathematically. We got to do something about it. And that something is getting out of dollars. So I think 2025 is the year where the dollar is seen for what it really is. And I mean I could see the dollar by year end trading at, I don't know, 70 or 80 on the USDX index. And I mean I think you're it's a lock that you're going to see $3,000 gold this year, and you may see much higher than that, depending upon how badly the dollar is battered.
Where can people find you, Bill?
You can go to my website. It's just billholter.com. Uh, if you want to contact me directly regarding precious metals business, my business email is bholter@proton.me.
Any sense of optimism, or because people are going to be like, "Oh, Bill, we're doomers." On a positive note.
Well, yeah, no, I was optimistic yesterday, just listening to uh, the executive orders because, I mean, I guess the best way to put it is it's like the adults are finally back in the room. For the last 4 years, we had just, day after day of ridiculous things that the news would tell you or whatever, the government would tell you, and there's no possible way that they were true. So just the fact that, we're going to have a dose of reality, I think that's excellent. However, the reality is not as bright as what people think. You know, Trump is not Jesus Christ. He's not going to come in and fix things as one man. I mean, even if he wanted to, there's no way to do it, and there's no way out of the debt trap. But that said, we're going to be dealing with realities as opposed to fairy dust.
I will say this, ending on it, him signing those executive orders last night in the arena with 20,000 people was brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, I mean, he's a promoter. He's been a promoter his entire life.
I mean, he's the ultimate showman. That he right in the center of the arena, and 20,000 people just going nuts.
Right.
Bill, as always, thanks for doing this. Look forward to more conversations ahead. Continuing to follow your work, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Mike.
Mic drop.